Around 50,000 Australian homes now have rooftop solar panels, most of them installed in the last 2 years under the government's generous rebate scheme. But now that boom's over, Australia's solar companies say they're preparing to pick up the pieces from a scheme which saw the market dangerously distorted. So where to now for the industry? Well, Solar Shop is one of Australia's largest providers of Grid Connect solar systems, installing about a quarter of those taken up under the federal government's rebate scheme. And we're joined in the studio tonight by Solar Shop Managing Director Adrian Ferraretto. Adrian, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Now, you say Australia is no longer the solar powerhouse that we once were in the 1990s. Why is that?
Well, back in the 1990s, we installed around 1 in 12 systems around the world. So Australia had 2 major manufacturers, and today we don't have any manufacturers left. And back then, you know, we were doing 1 in 12. Now we're doing less than 1% of the world's solar installation. So we've really lost a lot of ground over the years.
Why is that, though?
Government policy, pretty much. I mean, Germany and Japan both in the late 1990s decided to really push solar energy big time, whereas we have had some good subsidies here, you know, in the early 2000, 2001, but nothing like the feed-in tariffs that they've had in Germany and 60 other countries around the world.
Well, let's talk about that $8,000 rebate for rooftop solar panels, of course, that the government introduced. It led to an enormous boom, though, didn't it, in the industry? But was it the case that it just wasn't sustainable?
Yes, exactly. It was a very, very generous rebate, probably the most generous rebate in the world for a small solar system. It had a cap there of 1 kilowatt, and so Australia became the king of the 1 kilowatt system compared to, you know, Germany and Japan and Italy and those countries which install around 5 kilowatts usually, so a very small system. But what happened is that the rebate was so generous per watt that you're able to give away a solar system pretty much, and a company like ours could still make a profit after doing so. And so that meant many companies around Australia started giving away solar systems, and so the budget got spent very, very quickly, and it was supposed to last 5 years. It lasted 2 years. It was supposed to be a $150 million program lasting 5 years, ended up being over $700 million over 2 years. So a bit of a blowout there.
So what's the end result of this been, given that the scheme had to be axed so early?
Well, we knew that the scheme was coming to an end on June 30. It was pulled early, about 3 weeks early from the federal government, but we were promised a smooth transition from that old scheme to a new scheme called the Solar Credit Scheme, which is still very, very generous. But that unfortunately hasn't happened. Right now, the whole industry Australia-wide is pretty much stuck in limbo. We don't have any more subsidies for solar energy as it stands today.
For the industry's point of view, what does that mean for jobs?
Well, for jobs, it's not looking very good at the moment, especially in sales and marketing. For installations, it's very, very good because there's a massive pipeline of work which needs to be delivered now across the country. But looking at sales and marketing positions, it's looking pretty quiet at the moment, and we are really hoping that, you know, come August, September, something goes through. But in the meantime, we have asked for help from the federal government so we can get out there and sell on Monday.
I guess there's plenty of confusion out there, isn't there, about the government's ETS, the emissions trading scheme. So what's the best? Is it better to put a price on carbon through an ETS scheme, or is it better to have a rebate system like what we've seen to get solar panels in?
Solar panels are the only technology that can be installed on your rooftop. You can't put wind turbines on your roof. You can't do a hydro system in your backyard. Solar panels are there on the house. So they're the most really energy efficient product you can install, because the electrons that those solar panels generate go straight down into your home, whereas, you know, a hydro power station or a wind farm tend to be generated, you know, hundreds if not thousands of kilometres away when they finally get to your home. So, and solar is more expensive than those technologies. So not only does it need an ETS, it also needs a rebate. And the reason why we need a rebate is because, as it stands today, there are no manufacturers here in Australia of solar panels. And by the year probably 2015, it will be cheaper to install solar panels on your roof than it is to buy electricity from your provider. And so in the meantime, we need to build up the industry, because we're going to hit that tipping point in 2015 where everyone's going to want a solar system on their house because it's cheaper to do so than to pay your power bill.
So you mentioned the solar credit scheme a little earlier. Just explain a bit more about that. And are we kind of in a situation where we're all a bit in limbo at the moment? Yes,
we are. The legislation for the solar credit scheme hasn't passed the Senate, and it's gone through to an inquiry which is happening in August. So at the moment there isn't a solar credit scheme, but what it is essentially is a $7,500 rebate, call it that, for systems of 1.5 kilowatt, which is still, I think, a very, very generous rebate given that the price of solar panels are coming down fast.
Yeah, why is that?
Well, pretty much I think because of China. Back in the mid 2003, 2004, there was a shortage of silicon to make solar panels. Now the Chinese have built many silicon factories countries, and they're starting to build solar panels in the masses, and the price of solar panels is almost halved the last 12 months.
So what's your advice to people? What should they do right now if they want to be more energy efficient?
Well, I mean, there are many things that a household can do, from energy-saving light globes and all of those usual things. But of course, we'd like every household in Australia to consider putting on a solar electricity system today. And hopefully within a couple of months' time, there should be more certainty around the schemes available. But in the meantime, it's a good idea to find out what is out there and to get ready when the price of solar is less than the price of buying electricity from the mains.
Just clarifying one thing with the solar credit scheme, will the rebate be paid retrospectively?
Yes, it will. If the scheme does get through the Senate, it will be paid from, I think it's June the 12th onwards. So in the meantime, you can still install solar panels and then access your rebate later on down the track when it does get through the Senate. What
about work that state government's done, this, the solar feed-in tariff legislation, those kind of initiatives? Do they seem to be making good headway?
Yeah, it's a good start. It is a bit fragmented. There are different schemes in different states. Probably the most generous is in the ACT, followed by New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, and then Queensland. Nothing yet in Western Australia. And those schemes are, when you feed solar power back into the grid, the energy retailer has to pay you a premium for that electricity that's exported into the grid, which means you get a faster payback on your solar system. And so these schemes are in, I know, in South Australia for 20 years, in New South Wales for 15 years. So yeah, these are very, very good. But there should be really a national approach to feed-in tariffs, which is what has driven the industry globally in Germany and Italy and Spain and these countries.
All right, Adrian Ferraretto from the Solar Shop, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Nina.